Good morning, colleagues. This is meeting number 138 of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts for Thursday, May 16th, 2019. And I will remind all committee members, as well as those in the audience and our guests, that we are televised today, so I would encourage you to turn your telephones or your cell phones to vibrate or mute or whatever settings you need to do, airplane mode, and that way there'll be less distractions. Now, I did that about 3 weeks ago, and then it was my phone that rang, so I've made sure this time. We're here today in consideration of Report 5, Equipping Officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police of the 2019 Spring Report of the Auditor General of Canada. We're pleased to have with us again this morning from the Office of the Auditor General, Monsieur Sylvain Ricard, Interim Auditor General of Canada, and Nicholas Swales, Principal. Also from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, welcome our Commissioner, Brenda Lucky, and Deputy Commissioner, Contract and Indigenous Policing, Mr. Brian Brennan. And we will open the meeting and we'll give the floor to our Interim Auditor General, Monsieur Ricard.
Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie de nous donner la...
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to discuss our audit report on equipping officers of the RCMP. Joining me is Nicholas Swales, the principal responsible for the audit. The RCMP, with more than 18,000 officers, is Canada's largest police force. It provides Canadians with policing services at the federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal levels, and it serves within Indigenous communities. Since 2001, there have been 9 shooting incidents that caused the deaths of 15 RCMP officers in total. On June 4, 2014, an assailant with powerful firearms killed 3 Moncton RCMP officers and wounded 2 others. This audit focused on whether the RCMP provided its officers with hard body armor and semi-automatic weapons called carbines. A key purpose of this equipment is to protect officers in active shooting situations. The audit also looked at officer training on the use of carbines and pistols and at the maintenance of those firearms.
appropriate equipment and related training to comply with its duty to protect the health and safety of its officers under the Canada Labour Code and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act. We found that the RCMP did not define how many carbines were needed to adequately equip officers to respond to active shooters. As a result, the RCMP did not know whether it had provided carbines to all of the officers who needed them, and did not know how many more carbines it needed. We also found that the RCMP had enough hard body armor nationwide to meet its policy requirement of providing 1 set for each operational vehicle plus 10%. However, the Ontario and Quebec divisions did not meet this requirement, so not all officers had access to the armor. We found that the RCMP had met its target for the initial training of frontline officers on carbines, but that 13% of these officers had not completed the annual recertification of their training. This meant that these officers were not permitted to have access to their carbines until they had completed their recertification. We found that half of the RCMP carbines had not been maintained according to the RCMP policy. Likewise, the RCMP was not meeting its policy requirements for the maintenance of pistols. A firearm must be well maintained to ensure that it functions when an officer needs it to respond to a lethal threat, which generally occurs without warning. Dans l'ensemble, nous avons constaté que la...
Overall, we found that the RCMP did not have a plan to manage the acquisition of carbines. In our view, this contributed to backlogs in firearm recertification and maintenance. Inadequate planning also contributed to bottlenecks in distribution and to the RCMP's not always following procurement rules. We made 6 recommendations. The RCMP has agreed with all of them and has shared its action plan with us. The plan includes actions and timelines for our recommendations. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee might have. Thank you.
We'll now move to our commissioner, Lucky.
Good morning, bonjour, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for inviting me and my colleague to speak with you today. I am joined here with my colleague, Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan, who is in charge of our contract and Indigenous policing at the RCMP, and we're here to provide you with information and respond to your questions. At the onset, I would like to thank the Office of the Auditor General for its report and to highlight that the report is fully aligned with our Vision 150, the RCMP's roadmap to modernization. The RCMP turns 150 years old, or maybe 150 years young, in 2023, and since I've had the honor of taking the job as the Commissioner of the RCMP, I have begun to implement Vision 150. To do this, we sought the input of all RCMP employees to build our modernization roadmap, which focuses on objectives that fall under the 4 key pillars: our people, our culture, our stewardship, and our policing services. These 4 pillars have clear objectives that will steer us along the path forward in modernizing our organization. Since the Moncton shootings of 2014, the RCMP has worked diligently to implement recommendations from the McNeil report. The safety of our employees is of the utmost importance to me as the Commissioner and to the RCMP as a whole. A safe workplace is critical to the RCMP's ability to achieve its mandate of a safer Canada. Accordingly, we have accepted each of the OAG's recommendations and are actively addressing and implementing them. The OAG highlighted that we met and exceeded our carbine training target, and that we are also meeting our target of providing access to hard body armor to operational frontline officers. I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize additional work that has been done and is ongoing, which has had a positive effect on officer safety. Effective response to active shooter incidents require not only the right equipment, but also the right training and the right tactics. Therefore, any analysis of our members' readiness must take into account the tactical training. Since 2016, more than 13,000 officers have been trained in tactics to respond to active threats, and now all cadets at our training center receive patrol carbine and active threat training. As a result, an average of 25 newly trained members are deployed across the country each week. And recently, the Government of Canada has invested a significant amount of money for a new state-of-the-art 100-meter range and simulation center that will assist us in achieving these goals. We also have trained more than 1,100 police officers in initial critical incident response, which educates supervisors on how to manage critical incidents until an accredited critical incident commander can take charge. There have been numerous incidents across the country where this training and equipment has saved lives. Tactical training for RCMP officers has further supplemented other developments covered by the OAG's audit, particularly in relation to equipment and corresponding training. I am proud of how we continue to adapt and deliver leading-edge policing services that help keep communities safe. The RCMP has taken great strides in support of policing excellence and recognizes that there is always opportunities for continuous and ongoing improvement. Several activities are already underway to address concerns raised by the OAG. Last October, we started using an electronic interactive mapping system that provides operational leaders in RCMP divisions with the number of carbines and carbine-trained officers down to the detachment level. This system supports evidence-based decision-making on carbine distribution. The OAG found that we largely met our requirements for providing hard body armor. To continue looking forward for policing excellence, the RCMP is examining having hard body armor personally assigned to all operational frontline officers. We are also developing a stronger operational standard for the number of carbine-trained members and are examining the possibility of equipping every operational police vehicle with a long gun. With respect to firearms training, we have far more consistency and have made significant improvements in a number of key areas. For example, the annual firearms qualification program was recently revised to focus on skills development and further enhance tactical training. We continue to improve our firearms instructor training to focus on physical skills and increasing compliance rates through the creation of a more facilitative learning environment for our officers. Regarding our compliance levels for pistol and carbine annual qualifications, we recognize the importance of ensuring a ready workforce, and that is why we are reviewing existing firearms training policies and practices while also putting additional mechanisms in place to achieve the highest level of oversight and accountability. This work will be carried out under the guidance of the RCMP's National Mandatory Training Oversight Committee. The RCMP will always strive towards the desired compliance rates and will work towards solutions for the challenges to be overcome, such as those that come with Canada's geography and climate, particularly in the north. My senior executive team and I will continue to hold ourselves to the high standards and are committed to supporting the review of existing firearms training policies and practices in order to achieve the highest level of compliance and accountability. With regards to firearms maintenance, the RCMP has a well-established preventative maintenance program which seeks to ensure that all members have safe and reliable firearms for their use in their duties, as well as spares when required. We are meeting this objective, and in response to the audit, we will ensure that our current preventative maintenance policies are clarified so that the expected periods of time for servicing are clearly articulated and communicated. Lastly, the RCMP is committed to examining options for more robust project management and will ensure that life cycle elements are considered during the project approval process. From a government perspective, the RCMP will establish a committee for asset and material as part of its investment management framework to ensure investment decisions fully consider life cycles of given policing equipment. It should also be noted that the RCMP has improved its oversight on officer safety equipment through the creation of an operational equipment oversight committee that ensures the timely advancement of procurement, training, and healthy and safety components for priority equipment. The RCMP is committed to an open, fair, and transparent procurement process while obtaining the best possible value for Canadians. Before I conclude, I would like to stress that the RCMP is fiercely dedicated to taking care of our people, a key element of the RCMP's Vision 150. Our road to modernization is a constant process. We understand that we'll continue to face challenges and criticisms along the way, and we will continue to come out as a stronger organization. As we continue to work on the implementation of operational training and equipment, the OAG's recommendations will certainly assist us in our efforts, and I'm confident that we will continue to improve. The RCMP has developed a management action plan to address all of the recommendations and will be sharing it with our membership as part of our culture of communicating decisions and holding ourselves to account. Through stewardship and sound decision-making, we will ensure RCMP officers have access to the equipment and training they need to do their job as safely and effectively as possible. We would be happy to respond to your questions. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We will move into our first round of questions, and that will be Mr. Sarai, please, for 7 minutes.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to recognize the integral role of the RCMP has had in the safety of Canadians and the high level of safety and security. It's felt throughout the country, and we thank you for that, and especially in my own riding of Surrey Centre. As you know, Surrey has the largest RCMP detachment in Canada. It also is home to the BC headquarters, E Division, And so I'd like to thank you for your work, and whatever we can do to guarantee the health and safety of our officers is front and paramount. But this also gives us concern because we have a lot of police officers in Surrey Centre and Surrey in general. They work and serve there. So the Auditor General's report was quite concerning to us that 13% were found to not be trained and adequately to use carbines and to have body armor. So recommendation 5.24 states that the RCMP should establish a national standard to ensure that each detachment is adequately equipped with carbines. Given the nature of contract policing, can you explain exactly how the decisions are made and what equipment should be issued in different detachments that may have different needs?
Certainly, thank you for your question. We always work off risk assessment, and risk assessment does not always include the actual safety, but it includes the geography, how many members are at each detachment, do they have access to backup, how close backup is, depending on if they are an isolated post and can only be in fly-in, we'll take that into consideration. So it's not always based on criminal code statistics or the actual crime. It's also, we have to take all those into account. We put that through a risk assessment. And in the first round of deploying the carbine, for example, we had to ensure that detachments that were isolated were given the equipment that they needed. And we rolled it out because we could not purchase all of them at once. That we had to use a risk assessment, and that was in consultation with each district and detachment commander.
And we see numbers for Ontario and apparently Quebec. What are the numbers for British Columbia? How many have the training for carbines, and how many would have body armor?
I don't have the exact numbers with me, but we could provide those should you wish.
And the Surrey detachment, if you could, that would be of importance to us. How is the RCMP going to conduct assessments at the division or detachment level, given commanding officers evidence-based information to continue to make the sound risk-based decision on the carbine to be assessed? Like, how do you make that decision? I understand from the north was given priority first, but how does a officer who's on patrol hears a call, something that they need a carbine, do they stop and go back, or should they rest assured that their vehicle has the body armor and carbine that they need to go assess the situation?
Well, the risk assessment was done in the initial instance because we didn't have, could not deploy carbine for every vehicle. So that's when the risk assessment was done. But now we're in a position where each member would have access to the carbine if they are trained to put that in their vehicle. So that's changed. The risk assessment was more for the initial issuing of the patrol carbines. But in big units like your Surreys, they would have access to be able to put that, if they are carbine trained, to put that in their vehicle and be able to have access to that equipment.
How do you ensure that all of them are carbine trained? Like, why would not every officer be carbine trained? And when you have an annual fitness, et cetera, other reviews that you make sure the officer is complied to, why isn't carbine training one of those things?
Well, first of all, at the training academy, each cadet now receives, and this has been going on for a couple of years, we added 2 weeks to our 24-week induction training. 1 week is carbine training, and the second week is immediate action rapid deployment training. So now, going forward, every person that graduates from the training academy leaves with carbine training, unless they're unsuccessful, because it actually is a very rigorous training. So they would have to get retrained if they weren't able to pass while they were in the training academy. They may need to get reassessed when they're deployed.
How often do they have to get recertified?
Yearly.
Yearly? And how many of the officers are getting recertified annually, percentage-wise?
Well, our goal is 100%.
What's currently?
I don't have those numbers with me. But what happens is often for us to actually get to 100% is almost impossible. only because with transfers, members may be certified in the month of September because that's when their detachments do that their area does the recertification. In April, they may get transferred and miss when they were supposed to get recertified, so they may be delayed, so they might not get it exactly at a year. Also, when in the
But
northern...
you understand us as public servants out here, we have a situation where an officer got transferred midway in September, reacts to a situation, does not have access to a carbine because he or she was not trained on it, gets shot, becomes a casualty, will be held accountable, you'll be held accountable. How do we mitigate that to not happen so that everyone has the training, has the equipment, and we're not short of it? Because if we have 110% of the required amount, so we have 10% more than every single member, how do we ensure that everyone has training and has access to that at all times?
Well, we work on our robust training plan to ensure that certifications are done within their year. The same goes for our sidearm. Our rollout, our initial commitment when we first got the carbines was to ensure that we had, I think it was 65% of the membership would be trained on carbine. We've since exceeded that, and we're going to continue to exceed as we go along. Often there are some people who actually, for various reasons, might not get trained on. They may come from a position that wasn't frontline, so they were never trained on carbine. And then they get transferred to frontline, so now they'll get put in the queue to be trained for carbine. So that's why I say we do it as quickly as we can, but often to say exactly when they arrive, they may not get trained, but their training will be scheduled.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarai. One of the questions that you did pose to our commissioner was the number of members that had not the recertification, and it is in the Auditor General's report, 13% of those had not been recertified. So they had the certification, but not the year.
I want to know in British Columbia.
Oh, right, specific to
British
BC. I apologize. We'll now move to Mr. Davidson, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks.
I just want to echo my colleagues' comments and thank the RCMP for all the good work your officers do. I'm just going to roll back, and I think this is what's disconcerting to some Canadians, is back to the Moncton shooting. And just looking at a report first on that, it was determined that the RCMP had failed to provide adequate equipment and training to the Mounties who responded to the Moncton shootings in 2014. And there was a judge, Leslie Jackson, that actually applied a $550,000 penalty to the RCMP, which was allocated to various community initiatives and educational trust funds and the children of the Mounties who were killed. And according to Judge Jackson, the sentence must speak to the future leadership of the RCMP that the duty to ensure member safety should be given the highest priority. So my question is, based on the findings of the Auditor General's report being discussed today, do you believe that the leadership of the RCMP has adequately ensured safety of RCMP members since that sentence was applied? And and that it has been the highest priority of the leadership that it should be? It just, we're looking back at 2014 and now we're here in 2019 and dealing with this problem. So, and I recognize you have started a couple committees and exactly who those committees report to.
First, absolutely, safety is of the highest priority for the leadership of the RCMP. We've done many initiatives in the tactical training area with the critical incident first of all, immediate action rapid deployment training. So every member has to recertify on all their intervention options, and we added to that training, and this is not the new members, these are members in the field. So when they go to recertify on their firearms, they also get training on immediate action rapid deployment. That was added to their annual recertification. We are also in the coming years, we're looking like that was one portion. Now we're looking at different various soft and hard techniques, adding that as a recertification annually. We also have added critical incident response to that. So what happened, we saw the gap when, and it again in Moncton or in a big area like Surrey, it doesn't show itself, but on smaller areas where a bunch of members come onto a scene before maybe an emergency response team comes on or a trained critical incident responder comes on the scene, we needed to have the detachment commanders and leadership have that training so they could deploy members safely, having an eye on the situation, creating perimeters. So we created that training so that each supervisor would have that training to deal with a critical incident before specialized teams arrive on the scene. That's been rolled out. I'm trying to think of some of the other training we had.
And just the new committees as well that you've created, do they report directly to the leadership, to yourselves?
They would report through to Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan in the as part of community and Indigenous policing. Brian is in charge of the critical incident program, as well as any reviewing any type of equipment, looking at new equipment, testing. For example, we're in the midst of evergreening our sidearm. The Deputy Commissioner of Indigenous and Contract Policing would be the person that would start that review.
Okay. Looking at paragraph 5.23, the Auditor General report indicates discrepancies between the RCMP's data and the number of actual carbines located in various detachments across the country. And we have a big country and a great country, but is it possible that carbines have gone missing due to these discrepancies? And approximately how many RCMP firearms go missing every year?
To my knowledge, as far as the carbines go, I haven't received any reports of missing carbines. A lot of the sidearms, for example, they'll go into our armor shop and they'll be accounted for there. They may not be accounted for outside of that environment. I haven't received any reports of a.
No, I'm just saying. It says there's data discrepancies. So if we don't have good data, if we don't know how many guns we have, how do we know if any have went missing or haven't went missing, or is the data in check now, and we can confirm all the serial numbers and that all the carbines are actually accounted for? Do we have that data?
Yes,
Yes, thank you very much. So in the early stages of the rollout, we rolled it out from divisions rolled it out to districts, and then to detachments. What had taken place is that at that time we didn't have the most robust system to track those movements. But as pointed out in the OAG report, we have improved the system that we now have an interactive web-based model that we track them right down to the detachment level. So now we can go almost in live time, go right to the detachment, determine how many they have, the exact serial numbers, and how many people are in that detachment are actually trained.
Okay.
So we've moved the yardsticks quite a bit in that regard.
Okay. So you're 100% confident that there's been no carbines gone missing and that everyone is accounted for?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. It's encouraging that the RCMP that you've accepted all the Auditor General recommendation as a plan to put in place and to improve this situation. Does the RCMP recognize the findings of this audit undermine any public confidence in our national police force, especially when there is a threat now to public safety like an active shooter situation? I mean, the general public leaves this, reads this, and they get a little disconcerted.
How I would answer that question is that first, everything that gets reviewed always gets improved. And if we were to say that something was perfect, then I think we'd be, our organization would be naive. Even today, if we were to re-review, given how the evolution of policing and the dynamics, how it changes so often, we always have to be nimble and dynamic to change with that environment. So that's why we welcome these reviews, and we work very closely with the OAG when we're looking at things to review to make our organization better.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. We'll now move to Ms. Yip, please.
Thank you for coming. In your detailed action plan on page 1, it's mentioned about static maps from the national headquarters to monitor carbine distribution. What are static maps, and how does it relate to the monitoring and of the carbine distribution and training?
So thank you very much for the question. So the static maps are a web-based mapping system where when the carbines get deployed to certain detachments, it's tracked. So the commanding officer of the division or the people working for that particular commanding officer can bring up that actual detachment, and the map will show you have so many carbines and so many trained members. And then they're able to use that in determining further redeployment or more deployment of carbines, and to identify which members actually need that training in those particular detachments. Because of the nature of mobility within the RCMP, it's important that we have eyes on the training to ensure that we keep a robust complement of members trained and access to those particular weapons.
If it's interactive, that means it's being updated regularly, and then anytime another detachment wants to see, or if they need to have access to additional carbines, they can see that.
That's correct.
Okay, that's great. In your opening remarks, it's mentioned there's an average of 20 to 25 newly trained members that are deployed across the country every week. I think that's great. Is there enough body armor and carbines in reserve for these new members, as well as spares?
With our goal, our eventual goal is to ensure that they are assigned, we say, to each member. That's our goal. Right now, we ensure that they're in the vehicles, so they have access to that equipment when they go out on calls.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of attrition too, so
So
it sort of balances out. Yeah.
Yeah. The Auditor General report said that in 2013, there would be about a need for about 3,000 total rifles, and the force has now bought over 6,000 carbines. What has caused this number to increase so dramatically?
Well, we have 3 long guns. We have shotgun, rifle, and carbine, and we're doing a study on, do we need all 3? But because each one serves a different purpose depending on the type of policing and the rural environments. So to say, do we have enough of each? We are studying that, but for the time being, some divisions have opted out to not recertify on rifles, for example, and keep shotguns depending on their dynamics of their division. And we've given that decision to the individual commanding officers. So I sometimes think that we have so much equipment, we have to be sure that members can make great decisions with the equipment they have. So we want to make sure that they have the right equipment. So that study will be done as far as, I think it's, maybe Brian, you can expand on the 3 different.
Yes, so thank you. So as the Commissioner mentioned, we have 3 varieties of long weapons that we use. Your question around the number, 6,400 or 5,400 carbines out there, that again is based on the risk assessment of the different environments. Clearly, this is a weapon that the membership is comfortable in using. It's more adaptable to a lot of our policing situations, and our investment in our equipment leans us towards that particular weapon as opposed to maybe the long rifle, and we need to evaluate it. So we're looking at a long-term strategy in terms of exactly what weapons need to be provided to our membership and to what extent those weapons will be used. It's going to take us some time to get through that in terms of environmental and the availability, but our goal is to ensure that our members' safety is paramount and that we provide them with the proper pieces of equipment and training to do that job. So it's a more longer-term evaluation of that piece.
Well, I hope that can help with the increasing gun violence in our urban cities, especially where I come from in Toronto. And in my riding, we've had an increase in robberies. Was a risk analysis conducted by the RNCP to determine if the smaller detachments, like under 5 officers, might require carbines and body armor?
Yes, absolutely. Some of it was based on the geography again. When we have, for example, I'll use a Manitoba example, there's 23 detachments that are all, they're very in northern locations. 7 of them are fly-in only. So in order for them to have backup in a big incident, it takes a little longer because you don't drive to those detachments. So we had to ensure that they had the equipment. We made sure that they were deployed carbine and that members in those areas are trained. Where the challenge is, again, in those areas, for example, the 23 detachments in northern Manitoba are all limited duration. So every 2, 3, and 4 years, people are rotating in and out. So we have to make sure they get trained down south before they go up north, because we don't want to take them out of their communities to get trained because they're only up there for maybe as short as 2 years. So absolutely, the risk assessment was based on that, and the obviously the crime statistics as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yip. And now we'll move to Mr. Christofferson, please. And we'll follow that up, Mr. Christofferson, I think with Mr. Kelly or Mr. Kelly.
Very good. Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for your presence today. Good to see you again. I want a number of pieces to this, and my colleagues have raised a number of the issues I was going to, and that's all to the good. So I'm going to start drilling down a bit into get into some of the weeds here. Procurement. We have problems government-wide with procurement, all the way from buying, as everybody follows the saga of jets, military jets, all the way down to hammers. And when I look at 5.62. It says, we found the RCMP did not have a plan to manage the acquisition. We also found in the RCMP's efforts to expedite the rollout of the carbines, the RCMP and Public Services and Procurement Canada did not follow procurement rules. This matters. Now, when I look over to page 13, 5.72, there's further insult to injury in that not only did the RCMP not follow the procedures properly, and including Public Services and Procurement Canada, but once again, Treasury Board let us down on their challenge function, which is their duty to make sure that these things are double checked. So we had a falling down there. But specifically under procurement, here's what troubled me the most. Quote 5.71, under procurement rules, the RCMP should have submitted these orders. This would be for, I believe, for the carbines. Should have submitted these orders to Public Services and Procurement Canada as a single request. However, this request would have exceeded Public Services and Procurement Canada's own purchase authority and therefore would have required approval from the Treasury Board. Instead, the RCMP split the order into 3 requests, which Public Services and Procurement Canada ordered under its own authority. So what's the deal, Commissioner? I mean, this looks, for all intent and purposes, as an absolute deliberate attempt to get around requirements at Treasury Board, notwithstanding they didn't do their job either. What's going on here, Commissioner?
With the carbine, it's a single source, so it wouldn't have changed. We could only get it from the one. Once we determined which carbine we were purchasing, it wouldn't change anything because we can only buy it from one source. We could only afford so many at a time, so we could only purchase as much as we could afford. I actually, I'm not sure if I do have my the Director General in charge of that, if that he could maybe explain more.
Yeah, I do want to drill down a bit on this because it's problematic.
For those who may be watching this, departments bring their personnel from different areas of expertise. And although there's a few that sit at the table, there's others in the audience, and we're pleased to have Mr. Waters with us this morning. And were you able to hear the question back
Yes, I
there,
was.
Mr. Waters? And so we'll give you some time on that.
I'm good. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Commissioner, for allowing me to respond. What we had in place at the time was a standing offer to procure the carbines. And our view was that there was no requirement for us to bundle the requirement. So the requests were processed as soon as we needed, as the needs were determined, in order to expedite the contracting process. When you have a standing offer, you can do call-ups against those standing offers, and it would not have resulted, in our view, it would not have resulted in any savings. And because, as the Commissioner reiterate what the Commissioner meant, we purchased those under, it's called the Munition Supply Program, which has provided public service and procurement with a means to contract large quantity of small arms. And there are 4 companies that are designated as sources as part of the munition supply program, one being Colt Canada, where we did procure the carbines. So we do not feel it would have resulted in any savings. We had standing offers in place, and we followed the process, and bundling of those would not have resulted in any savings.
So this wasn't a get around?
No.
Okay. Auditor General, are you comfortable with the answers you've heard?
I'll maybe put a nuance in there, and I'll leave Mr. Swell add any specific he feel is needed. For us, the point is and we're pleased to see that in the action plan, in the response, the RCMP will address the planning aspect of the business, because for us, that's the cause of it. So they get requests from all over the place, all come in at some point, all together. There's a mechanism and rules in place that when you're above a certain amount, there's a process to follow, including, and that's the message we're trying to convey here, Treasury Board has a role to play when it's above a certain amount. And when you let that role being played out, it contributes to good management. It could have, as other mechanism, the Commissioner was referring to the fact that they're open to all sorts of challenge and question process. That's one of those. It bring a process by which you get questions. It help highlighting ways of improving, ways of looking at projects. So that's the message we're conveying here.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone here from Treasury Board, Chair? No. So maybe in our deliberations, we can think about perhaps a letter to Treasury Board to ask them where were they on their challenge function, because again, that's the safety net for us in most of these policy procedures. Is if it's failing us at the departmental level, it gets caught at Treasury Board in their challenge function, and so it seems that this may have slipped here. Commissioner, well, not an individual, but. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Thanks. What department is responsible for the planning? Like, I'm really surprised at the lack of planning. That's normally not RCMP failure. You're usually pretty good at doing lots of planning. It's between there and the ground where things get difficult, as in most cases. Who was responsible for this? Where did it fail? Where did your organization fail? What part? And what have you done about that to beef up the very planning that Monsieur Ricard has just spoken of? Thank you,
Jefferson,
Chair.
Commissioner.
Yes, we have obviously multiple planning sections depending on what we're dealing with. But when we go into equipment, there's a robust plan as to what's next in line for equipment. Then we do a lot of testing of that equipment. We have to do a lot of consultation with our contract partners because we're in with contract, and we have to make sure that they're made aware of any new purchases because there's money involved that is not all federally funded. In some cases, in a Surrey environment, 90% of that is paid by the municipality. In a provincial environment, it's 70. So we have to make sure that we can do a proper rollout within the funding envelopes that we have, and that's where risk assessments all come into play. But in this case, it was very quickly we had determined where these carbines needed to be deployed, and they got in the hands. Obviously, in the Moncton situation, there were members with carbines, but in that situation, it was a pretty dynamic situation, and I'm not sure. I know with the McNeil report, they have made those recommendations, and we are absolutely following all the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We'll now move to Mr. Kelly, followed by Mr. Dhaliwal.
Commissioner, I'm going to read the sentence from the concluding paragraph of the report. We conclude that the RCMP had not provided all of its officers with access to hard body armor, carbines, and recertification training to respond to an active shooter. Question to you, why?
We could not deploy 100% to every single member. With 20,000 members, we could not deploy 20,000 hard body armor nor the carbines at 100% of the need because of the amount that it took. We had to do it in segments. Maybe I can get Mr. Waters to explain that process, because given the numbers that we were dealing with, we had to do the risk assessment and ensure that based on our risk assessment, we'd roll it out in that fashion. We just didn't have enough equipment to do it at the same time.
But Commissioner, in the report, I don't see anything in the report saying that you were under-resourced, that you did not have that you did not have enough hard body armor, that you did not have enough carbines, that you received equipment that you had asked for, and yet members that needed access to this equipment did not have it. That is not a matter of resourcing or having resources. That's management. Why did the people that need it not have it?
Well, I can say that an active shooter situation can happen anywhere. To say that we knew that what was going to happen in Moncton, no, we didn't know that was going to happen in Moncton. We tried to ensure that when we did the deployment, that we could get as many of those types of equipment out to as many people as possible. To say that at the point of the tragedy in Moncton that everybody that needed access to a carbine had it, no, they didn't. We didn't have the means to do that.
Okay, Mr. Ricardo, are you satisfied with that answer?
Well, I'll bring it back to the project management, the planning aspect of it. You, as the commissioner mentioned, you can't. I would accept that overnight you can't deploy 20,000 or whatever the exact number is instantly. But what you need to do is establish what you're trying to do, have a national standard to determine how many carbines you need, plan for it, procure for it, and deploy in an orderly manner and manage the progress of that. I'll go back to where I was earlier. For us, that's a key element in the report. It's good project management. The project management aspect is the cause of not planning for the need for recertification, the maintenance, the workload of maintenance for the capacity they had. Good planning allow you to see all of those things coming.
And it was your finding that good planning did not take place.
Yeah, that's a very important part of our report. And again, we're pleased to see the action and the response. they're going to address that because it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it's a circular thing.
Absolutely. I do want to get back to the commissioner, and to my question wasn't why do 20,000 members of the force not have a carbine and a set of hard body armor? My question was, why did the Auditor General find why was there not better management in this? Where did the management break down? This is about management. This isn't about resources. This isn't about whether or not every single member has a carbine. This is about why the project wasn't managed correctly. This is the Committee for Accountability for Public Spending.
We took the steps that we felt were needed to, first of all, procure and deploy the carbines as per our risk assessment. Obviously, in the case of when we refer to Moncton, there were gaps in that, and we admit that there was gaps in that, and trying to figure out how to better do that through such reviews from the OAG and through our planning process. So we've reviewed our planning process to ensure that when we need to, for the next type of equipment, when we get that kind of equipment, we have to make sure that we are more succinct in our planning, most definitely.
One last quick question. I've got a little more time. The RCMP did not track its distribution of hard body armor in any national database. We've heard about poor data from various government departments, from virtually every committee report that we've heard from the Auditor General. When Canadians read this, it conjures up images of force members that need hard body armor and don't know where it is, don't know how to access it or get it because there's no database. How do you even know where your equipment is and how to ensure that it's distributed appropriately if you don't have a database that keeps track of where your equipment is?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
And as Deputy Commissioner Brennan referred to earlier, we have improved on our tracking for the equipment. It's a little bit more problematic with hard body armor versus a carbine because it's not serial numbered, but we are ensuring that the numbers are tracked on this system.
Thank you. And just before we go to Mr. Dollywall, I want to just explain to you, not so that you feel you are being picked on so much, because this committee takes the data dissemination, data management, data, very seriously. We're finding, as far as across government, there is a data problem in this country: management, input, and access. And so when we see that the Auditor General, again, right on the first page, nor did the RCMP have the necessary information, that goes back to data. And we just go through the report in different places that talks about data. So I want to build on one thing before going to Mr. Dollywall, and our analysts have helped with this. You've already talked about some of the changes that you're doing to data, but does the RCMP currently have the suitable information management system and the training on that system to accurately track and manage, for example, weapons inventories, certification, recertification? So we all heard of Phoenix pay system. We've heard of other things where it boils down to problems with data systems. Is the system good, and is the training on that system adequate in the RCMP?
We're always, thank you for that question, because we're always looking at technology. And one thing I can say, and part of Vision 150 is getting better business intelligence within the RCMP. We have a lot of databases, but often we can't do the analytics. So we need to get better at that. But with equipment, I know some of the technology that we're rolling out, for example, in Surrey Detachment, we have 800 members at that detachment. And they have a system where they can not only track equipment coming in and out by each individual member when they're assigned at the beginning of their shift, a CEW, a conducted energy weapon, carbine, when they're not individually issued, that can be tracked. And not only can it be tracked, somebody asked for a conducted energy weapon, they've been off for 3 weeks, and that system will say, sorry, I can't issue you that because your certification expired yesterday, for example, or expired while you were away for 2 months seconded here. So the technology is there. We've rolled it out in the bigger units, but we need to, we're always looking at better tracking, not only of resources such as equipment, but also with members themselves, tracking their whereabouts for critical incidents through Android phones, which we've just purchased 8,000 to better track for critical incidents, which was part of the McNeil recommendations. And
Good. Thank you very much for that extra information. Mr. Dhaliwal, I didn't steal your time. You'll get your time.
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair,
sir.
and welcome the witnesses. My question goes to Auditor General Ricard. In Surrey, even though we are very well served by the RCMP, but the new mayor and the council is taking the direction going into the municipal police force. Could you tell me, when it comes to standards, RCMP maintaining all these standards and the municipal police, do you see any discrepancies or how they are doing? Or what are the challenges that Surrey will face?
We have not audited that. We have not analyze or compare benchmark to other organizations. That is something for management to do. I suppose they do that when they do their risk assessment and compare to other organizations. So I'll leave it to the organization to maybe speak to that. That is not something we've audited.
Commissioner Lucky, thank you very much again. The great work that RCMP is doing to keep our country streets safe, and particularly Surrey Newton has the detachment, and Randeep and myself has visited a few times. Great progress that they have made. But question to you now, if you can tell me, because in Surrey is thinking going to municipal police force, if you can see how it will affect.
We obviously don't control the standards of the municipal agencies. However, often they come to us when we are rolling out the new equipment. When we hear of new technology that they're onto, we are sharing that technology. I know in some of the provinces they're actually looking at provincial standards for all their police agencies, and it's something that we are examining as far as it's interesting. I just had this conversation last night about national policing standards and looking at, as a country, maybe that's something that we need to look at when it comes to national policing standards. But geography in our country always changes the standards, because what would happen in Surrey might not happen in Pangerton, Nunavut. But yes, we don't control their standards, but we often share them. And when we are looking at new equipment, we'd often go to somebody who already has that equipment.
Commissioner, last year, few of the RCMP officers, came to my office and they expressed concerns about not getting even the uniform on time, and the cars were not maintained, the old models. And my concern is, if they can't get the basic equipment, how you will develop a plan that the morale and the confidence for the RCMP officers is there, that they will be able to get the proper training and proper equipment.
Sometimes, I will comment, sometimes it's not a question of having the equipment or the uniform. Sometimes it's just a personal preference on what type of uniform they have. I know in the Lower Mainland in particular, many of the individuals buy their own pants because they don't like the issued pants. We are examining all of that, and under Vision 150, we have an innovation mailbox that allows the members to provide suggestions on equipment and training. We've received many in the uniform department, and we're testing actually in the Lower Mainland some new uniform kit. We do have, when we are procuring, obviously, in the RCMP, dealing with 20,000 members, it is a huge task, especially when we go to switching equipment. But when it comes to the safety equipment, that is sort of a non-negotiable, as far as if we're going to get that equipment in, we have to make sure that we have enough for what the risk assessment tells us. Absolutely.
And Commissioner, this 13% that officers that need to get trained, what do you see the deadline or timeline for getting that completed?
Do you have that?
Well, we work to ensure that all our members get the training they need in a timely fashion. That 13% may not be actual regular members who are active for duty. So some of that 13% could be those that are off on long-term sick leave, could be on maternity, paternity leave. So that number is very hard for us to determine. And also it's taking at a point in time. But with our training regime in terms of identifying who needs the training, we are making gains in that area. But it's not always 13% of our active members. So we're constantly refreshing with the members that they need this training, and we provide the opportunities for it.
Thank you. Mr. Motz, welcome.
Thank
We'll
you,
let
Chair.
you speak, but not vote.
Thank you. Sounds like in my house. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, our witnesses, for being here today. I want to just go back and reinforce or just clarify a couple things. You talk about the 20,000 members that the RCMP has, but we all understand that those are not 20,000 operational members. And it's obvious that we will never certify or obtain carbines for 20,000 members. The issue would be, and I think the Auditor General has made it clear, is the operational people. It should be understood, I hope, that every operational member and every operational vehicle in the fleet of the RCMP, no matter where you are in Canada, should have access to a carbine. Is that your goal?
I would say yes and no, because obviously in a marked vehicle, yes. Unmarked vehicles, we may not, the ratio might not be one per vehicle, because in the unmarked and the plainclothes world, when they need the carbines, they work as a group and they go and do what they need to do. So they will take the carbines that they need for that. They are not reacting to frontline policing. There's other people that do that. So that's why I say yes and no.
Fair, but we know in policing things are dynamic, and when you have a Mayerthorpe and you have a Moncton, you don't have operational guys responding to that by themselves. You have your plainclothes cars responding. You have your guys that aren't necessarily equipped to handle that. And so I think it's important to appreciate that those members, they might be on traffic in a plainclothes car. They may need access to a carbine in the right circumstance. So I just, that's what I want to try and get at as far as the training also and the issuance of carbines, that the goal from the McNeil report is to have the members of the RCMP who are put in those positions properly trained, properly equipped, and then the maintenance, recertification of that equipment. Now, the other thing I want to ask about is body armor. Your members, operational members, wear soft body armor as a matter of issue, and it's a requirement by your policy, from what I understand. Does your soft body armor have the plates? Is that when you say we're going to now go to a hard body armor, are you doing plate inserts?
No.
Or are you doing a separate body armor? Fair enough. So are those then, the goal is to have those installed or included in the equipment of in your trunks of those operational vehicle? Is that the plan?
Right now, that's where it is. Our plan is to individually assign.
Okay. Training. You indicate that 13% of your members are not certified in carbines. Is that 13% of your operational members, or is that 13% of your 20,000 members?
That is 13% of the operational, I believe.
Because that's an important distinction, right? And I don't know if the Auditor General found that number.
Are you referring to recertification or
Certification. Because I think I'm just trying to remember what the report said. It said 13% of your members are not certified, I believe. So I'm just trying to clarify whether that meant of the 20,000 or if that meant of your operational members. I don't know how many of those would be.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that was of members who had received initial training on the carbine.
First time around.
The first time
Okay.
around, yeah.
So thank you for that. So from what I know from my background, from many friends and former colleagues in the RCMP, as well as traveling across the country on many issues related to my portfolio in public safety, I hear that training on issues of handguns, carbines, officer safety tactics is not consistent across the country with the RCMP. So what you might have in the Maritimes is a real funnel point, touch point with the ability to have your members recertified when they come there. Different than those around Regina, those around Ottawa, right? So is it possible that the RCMP may expand their ability to recertify by having private gun instructors who are fully qualified as much or more than sometimes our own members would be? Is that a possibility to get those recerts up in those areas where we are lacking in getting recertifications?
I will add, it's not always specific to the amount of instructors. It's location and the ranges. Carbine is very specific on what kind of range we can use, and we're very limited in that area. It's also geography. When you have, for instance, in Nunavut, all those detachment members need to come to a central location to recertify. So it's not just the fact that it's intense on the instructors, it's intense on moving those members to locations where they can recertify.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Brennan, did you want to add to that or no?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that it's not just about the training, the static training of the use of the carbine itself. So using private instructors does have its barriers in terms of articulation of RCMP policy, how we work in teams, so while private instructors may have the functional capability to fire the weapon, it's all those things around it that is also inclusive in our training that they would not be exposed to. The tactical.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. We'll now move to Mr. Ayoub.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being there. I have 5 minutes. It's really difficult to discuss all this in 5 minutes, but as my colleagues mentioned, I'd like to express our worries when it comes to monitoring. I don't know if this is a question of management, because what I've heard till now is a lot of justification. We're told there's a lot of geographic problems, for training problems. In my past, I was involved with local police forces in Quebec, and I can tell you that anything having to do with training, whether it's equipment, tools, firearms, or body armor, this was critical. It was absolutely essential to their job. Nobody was out on the field without those tools. I'm really uncomfortable to find out that there's a turnout and that 100% cannot be attained. There's always some percentage that cannot be attained for various reasons. Don't these people in the field not have all the normal required training? Don't they have all the equipment they should have? Reassure me here, because I'm really worried.
Assure you that they do get their training and their equipment that they need. When you speak about justification, it's more about the realities that we're dealing with, and it's about when we roll out new equipment. There's a reality of not being able to roll out 20,000 items at one given time, or training those members 20,000 at a time. So it's not really a justification, more a reality and how best we can do that in the safest manner. So when we talk about carbines, we knew we could not stop and train 20,000 people in 1 week. So we had to figure out what's the best way to do that within the realities and the risk assessment. So as far as the existing equipment, yes, absolutely. We do regular training. They go to regular block training. They get recertified in their existing equipment. It's just when we roll out new equipment that it becomes a little bit more problematic.
Malgré ce que vous me dites là.
Well, despite what you're telling me now, when I look at the Auditor General's report, there are indications that there is a lack of maintenance There's a certain percentage of people who haven't been trained. There are all kinds of things. Even in Quebec and Ontario, there are police forces, or let's say groups of RCMP officers who were not respecting the rules they were supposed to respect. So how come this has to come from the Auditor General? How come we only get these comments from him? Don't you have something internal to have self-evaluation so that periodically, instead of waiting or just reacting, you're being proactive and not have this kind of comment come at you? I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of this personally. With all due respect to the Auditor General, I wouldn't like that, or from anybody for that matter.
Absolutely. It's not that we welcome any criticism of our systems, but everything that is looked at is a snapshot in time. So when we say that 13%, for example, have not, or a percentage of firearms have not been maintained, that's a snapshot in time. A member gets advised that their pistol, for example, needs to be maintained. They will send it in. That one is now not maintained, but they're not carrying a pistol that's not maintained. They get a spare that's maintained. But the numbers that aren't maintained, obviously, within that year.
Êtes-vous en train de me dire que le
Okay, are you telling me that the Auditor General's report should specify that kind of situation? Because you're giving me more details now, but were these details given to Mr. Ricard? Mr. Ricard, were you aware of this kind of procedure and that kind of information? I'll sound like I'm being very repetitive here, but yes, it's a snapshot at one point in time. But on that day, that month, or the previous month, given the evidence of the audit, that's what came out. That's why it's so important when we're talking about recertification. There are challenges. They have to have access to shooting ranges. Sometimes there are many in one sector. Sometimes they're in isolated places. These are challenges that all organizations confront. Yeah, but that's not part of your report. That wasn't indicated in your report. But saying that's why it's important to plan properly. We know this as managers, that we have realities and challenges, and we have to plan for that, because you're living in an isolated post. You can't bring these officers to be trained all at once because you need some there. That's a reality that all organizations face. And I thank the committee for bringing this back all the time. The quality of information systems and audits is essential. And we see this too often at the Auditor General's office.
Mr. Christofferson, and then finally Ms. Just Mr. Christofferson is all I have.
Good. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to underscore that we are talking a lot of data, a lot of detail, and getting in the weeds in that, but let's not lose sight of the fact that the subject matter is about officer safety and public safety. And when these things go wrong, that's okay, it's just a house starting. When these things go wrong that are just paperwork for us right now.
He sees flashing lights. They
Exactly.
stop.
I'm surprised they aren't going for it. You notice they didn't rush to protect us. Okay, so I just wanted to underscore that this is not a good report. And I thank my colleague for raising that. The conclusion was that you did not provide all your officers with access to hard body armor, carbines, and recertification training to respond to active shooters. So we've been kind of quiet and subdued here, but that's because we aren't dealing with dead citizens. We're dealing with policies that are meant to prevent that, and the policies are not where they should be. So it is still serious. I want to go to page 8. Again, and it's been raised a couple of times, and I noted it as 5.37. I had it down as sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We found that the good was the RCMP had met its target for the initial training of frontline officers on carbines. Congrats for that. That was good. Well done. But 13% of these officers had not completed the annual recertification. We've talked about that a bit. That's bad. We also found that 13% of all officers who were required to carry pistols had not completed their annual pistol recertification. That's the ugly part. 5.42 underscores every officer who is required to carry a pistol on duty must complete the pistol recertification every year. Now, that's RCMP policy. So, Mr. Bremen, I don't have my glasses on. Bremen, sir, I heard you giving kind of a defense of the 13%. But I want to ask you, it's your number. It's the RCMP that said this needs to be done once a year. It's not from outside saying you have to do this irresponsible, unmanageable thing. It's your own numbers. Now, back in 2005, you were at 23%. So 14 years later, we're at 13. We're going the right way, but we're still in double digit. So what's the deal? Are you either going to meet the darn standard or change it? But please don't keep coming back here failing to meet a standard that you set. Thoughts, please.
Yes, it's the standard we set, and we set it to ensure that our members are proficient in the use of their weapon for their own protection and that of the citizens. It's not, my reply is not a defensive reply. It's the reality of what we have in terms of our ability to train those members. So if, for example, if I was to recertify today, and a year from now, the training schedule for the unit that I'm in is not scheduled till June, it would look like in a year's time that I failed to qualify within a year. When the reality is it is on that number. However, we are also restricted by our accessibility to proper ranges within the RCMP's ability to train. So usually we train in outdoor facilities, so our training for most of the country is between May and October, and we train using a wide range of outdoor ranges. So in that regard, our training is somewhat limited to 6 months of the year, so we try to push through as many people in that time period. Now, some of those people or numbers may not be working during that time period, as I mentioned before, off-duty sick, maternity leave, paternity leave. But we haven't constantly washed those numbers down to remove those numbers from the 13%. We are extremely confident that the number of operational, deployable, frontline resources have the requalification within a reasonable amount of time of that 1 year period, giving our training. It's the reality that we work with, and if we could train in facilities 12 months of the year, 5 days a week, we would do that.
I hear you. I'm trying to be fair-minded about it, but again, it's your number, it's your system. So if you need to put in factors that make a more realistic number, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to create a measurement, consistently fail in that measurement, and just come up with excuses as to why. I'd rather see a number that more accurately reflected, like maybe it's 7%. Which is, that would be easier to manage. But I am having a little difficulty when you set a standard, don't meet it, and then come in and tell me why the number's not as effective as it looks like on paper.
If I could just add one, I think you said it best when it really is about officer safety. And by somebody delaying their qualification by a month, they're not vulnerable. The risk is not high that they will not be able to shoot their
No, fair enough, Commissioner. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm accepting some of that. As you well know, I have a little bit of background in policing. I understand the management side of it, too, and I know how incredibly difficult it is. And that's why I'm left perplexed with why you can insist on having a number system where you rate yourself, but you're not factoring in your own mitigating factors. If you don't factor that in, then you're creating a number that just causes confusion. Because if at 13%, I'm thinking, it's not horrible, but that's not good. It should be 100%. That's what it's supposed to be. Now, if there's some variables, put that into the formula so that the number that you're giving to the public and reporting to Parliament is an accurate reflection that takes these kind of things into account. So I'm hearing you. I'm trying to be fair-minded and just say if what you're saying is true and that number is not as accurate because there's nuances, then find a way to factor in those nuances so when we look at a number, it's a real number.
But we could easily say, for example, we only require 75% to qualify, but we want everybody to qualify. The reality is, at any given time, the officer, the OAG could come in. We will never have 100%. That is the reality. And it's a reality for all police agencies because it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah, I tell you, to me, this just reinforces the need for a police services board. Because you're raising the point: should it be 75%? Should it be at 100%? That's what a police services board would look at and would talk about. We don't have that in our system. We didn't have it in Ontario. And it needs to be fixed. It shouldn't just be one person, the Solicitor General and Minister of Public Safety, who has all that responsibility for all this minutia. There should be an accountability layer, and I know the government's starting to bring that in, but it's a somewhat limited mandate from what I can see. So again, to me, you're arguing against yourself, not me. I'm just trying to find what is the number. I look at the number the AG gives me, and then you say that number isn't really that number because there's this, this, and this, and yet you're the one that created the number and the formula to determine whether you achieve that number or not. That's all. I'm just it just leaves me a little confused. And I've taken up most of my time on that. I hope I get one more round because I've got one last area I'd like to pursue if I could.
You now have your next
well, round. Thank you very much to my vice chair colleague. I appreciate that. On data, I want just again, it's your policy. The policy on page 10, 5.53, RCMP policy states that pistols and carbines must be sent to the armory for preventative maintenance every 3 years or after every 5,000 rounds fired, whichever comes first. But then it turns out that you don't keep track of how many rounds are fired on each firearm. So what's the deal? Why do you maintain a policy that says either this threshold or that threshold, but we only measure one threshold anyway? Why do you have a policy like that?
I'm going to refer that question to Mr. Waters.
Yes, sure. Thank you for the questions. Yes, thank you, merci pour la question. So initially, when we were having discussions with the OEG, and we did mention to them that we will amend the policy and remove that 5,000 rounds. The 5,000 rounds was there years ago is because we had a lot of members who were doing some competitive shooting. They were going to shows, but now our general duty members, they don't do that anymore. So essentially, the 5,000 round is a moot point, and we don't track the rounds anymore. But as we told the Auditor General, we will change the policy to remove that because that is no longer relevant.
Okay, is there I should probably know this, but I confess I don't. Is there a deadline in your action plan to have that done? Or is that
it'll be done very shortly. I can tell you, it'll be done very shortly. We can do that. Yeah, it won't take long for us to do that.
Okay, because just to reinforce, and I'll end here. Just to reinforce the chair's message about data and data collection, it's also making sure we interpret it properly. So when we see policies, especially an outfit like the RCMP, I mean, you got to cut a little bit of slack for some outfits that just don't have the means, but you do. And so when we see some of the lack of planning, redundancy in policies like this, I'm glad to hear that it's being caught, but I'm somewhat troubled that something like that would still be there at this stage, and that it took the Auditor General report to flush it out. Now, luckily we have a system that does that, but to reinforce this, and I hope the next Parliament continues to make this a priority. We've been doing this for a number of decades now, collecting information. As Mr. Ferguson used to say, we've gotten very good at collecting information. We're just not very good at using it. And that's why we're continuously pushing on this. It doesn't generate headlines. It's not very politically sexy, but it is with the key and cornerstone to proper governance and management. And so On balance, again, as a citizen, especially as I take leave of the public stage, I do offer, again, as we always do, our thanks for the work of the police officers and everybody in the RCMP. But this is not a good report, and you can do better. And I know that going forward, you will do better for Canadians. And hopefully, when there's a follow-up report in a few years, it'll look a little better than the one that we're following up from on 05. So thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Auditor General, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you all. And as far as there's just a couple of quick little questions. I don't have anyone else on the speakers list, but the Auditor General's report says that in 2018 there was 18,000 RCMP officers. Today you have used the number 20,000. Is that indeed the number? I mean, that sounds good. We were worried about attrition and recruits and keeping up to the attrition rate. Are we at 20,000? What is the plan in the next few years? This is a little bit outside the parameters of the report, but just on that, please.
Those are a great question. Yeah, we're just over 20,000. I don't have the exact number. We are continuing to put through 40 troops per year at the RCMP Academy, which translates into about 1,200 new graduates a year with the attrition. We're pleased to, we've been working hard at our vacancy rates, and we're pleased that in this fiscal year we'll be down to around 1.5% vacancy but we still are dealing with strategies to deal with soft vacancies, such as members off-duty sick, paternity leave, maternity leave, because that is also affecting us. It doesn't reflect in the vacancy numbers officially because the position has a body in it. The body's just not at the office. So.
Right. So I live in a small rural community, county, where a number of years ago there was an RCMP there was a shooting incident. 2 RCMP officers were shot and injured, luckily not killed, although there was a fatality in the shooting. At the time, we hear a lot about overtime in the RCMP. I think sometimes RCMP officers depend on overtime. I mean, they look forward to those extra hours. Did lack of resources, does that play into this audit at all, where you've mentioned a number of times that people were off on maternity and others were off on sick, and maybe some of the recertification didn't happen? I can tell you that sergeants or commanding officers in some of these detachments fear maternity leaves because it leaves the detachment short. And so does that play into this as well, as far as the recertification? Because we just couldn't send someone to be recertified?
Well, it affects the numbers, as Deputy Commissioner Brennan alluded to, when we count, because they are an operational member. They're just not at work at that snapshot in time. That's one way it affects. But obviously, there's a lot of planning that has to go into effect when you have the maternity leave and the paternity leave options. Like I said, we have this short window for recertifications. So what we do try to do, for example, when I was in charge of Northern Manitoba, we would have relief members so that we could put members up there so members could come down and do their training, because they shouldn't, while they're up in the north, be missing training opportunities. So obviously we do have where we can bring people in on relief. We use overtime, but again, we have to be aware of mental health, the mental wellness of our members as well. So we don't want to rely everything into the overtime solution.
Right. When I go into these finals, this is the second or third time of leaving it in the committee's hands. Second or third time I go into the final comments trying to summarize everything up, and then all of a sudden hands start shooting up. Now they want to come forward. So I probably not going to today, but I do just want to finish this up by saying this committee takes very seriously the jobs that we're called to do. Sometimes it deals with straight data. Sometimes it deals with delivery of programs, money, accountability, transparency, cost saving. Today we're dealing with lives. typically, and management practices, but these have real consequences. So when, for example, in the case that we're looking at today, in 2011, I'm not sure if it was an Auditor General's report or an internal review that you did, but in 2011, the RCMP officers, in an analysis, recognized that they did not have the firearms they needed for proper safety and for delivery of public safety. That was 2011. There were 3 deaths in 2014, and when the mandated review took place, I think in December of that very same year, they found out that a lot of the reason was that the Moncton officers did not have the necessary body armor. Then the court comes later and finds that RCMP is guilty in not providing adequate equipment, including maybe the carbines, and that's in 2019. Now the Auditor General comes and says, well, we still don't have it where we would like to see it. And so that's why this committee is here. This committee is here to make certain that proper process is followed. And that's why Mr. Christofferson, he's drilling in on 13%. You know, it could be 30%, it could be 3%. The Auditor General has been clear. Is process followed? Is the best management practices followed? And that's what we care about. And so I think today we have, we ask ourselves, should we believe that this time the RCMP brass will in effect heed the Auditor General's recommendation? We see in the action plan that they have, and that indeed I see some timelines of April 2019, so we've already met those, so we're encouraged by that. But again, we follow up on this, and we want to be certain when we look at this next time that we have bettered our past numbers, and it's because of the Auditor General's report, it's because of a Public Accounts report, it's because of RCMP brass taking this very seriously and following through. So thank you. Point of privilege? Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. We have asked staff. This is a strong committee, and we have a lot of authority to put people through some pretty tough times. We ask our staff, if we're wronging anyone, let us know. Earlier, I put a lot of blame on Treasury Board not doing their challenge function. Dylan was good enough, our analyst was good enough to point out to me that in this particular case, because of the process that was followed, it wouldn't have been in front of Treasury Board, so there was no Treasury Board challenge function to be had, so me criticizing it is completely wrong, and I withdraw and apologize. That was incorrect. They did nothing wrong in this regard, and I wanted to correct the record.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christofferson. You won't be sanctioned with any loss of speaking time in the future. But we thank our Auditor General's office for appearing before us today, as well as the RCMP. And let me say to all parties and to all members of this committee, thank you. I think today we had very good questions, and as we always do. But thank you so much, and we will now be adjourned. Sorry.